The massive shape of General Kvortak dominated the strategic briefing room aboard Harmonia Terminus. His scaled skin gleamed under the lights as he surveyed the assembled officers and cadets with barely concealed disdain. The Xylosian commander's reputation preceded him. Decorated war hero, tactical genius, and notorious for his contempt toward what he considered lesser species. The Nebula Unity exercises will commence at 0600 tomorrow, Kvortak announced, his deep voice rumbling through the chamber. All units will participate according to the protocols I have established. His cold, reptilian eyes scanned the room, lingering momentarily on the human contingent. The Earthers were relative newcomers to the Galactic Alliance, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 70 years ago. Their inclusion in these joint military exercises was a political necessity that Kvortak clearly resented. The human cadets will be assigned to support roles only, he continued, not bothering to mask the dismissive tone in his voice. Their inexperience makes them a potential liability in combat scenarios. At the back of the room, Cadet Ilera Vance stiffened. She was small even by human standards, with dark hair pulled back in a regulation bun and sharp, observant eyes. As the top-ranked cadet in her class at the Earth Alliance Space Academy, she had earned her place in this exchange program through relentless dedication and exceptional aptitude. "Sir, with respect," she said, her clear voice carrying across the suddenly silent room. "The human contingent has consistently scored in the top percentile during the preliminary training sessions. We've demonstrated proficiency in both tactical assessment and execution." The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees as Kvortak slowly turned toward her. Alliance officers of various species exchanged uneasy glances. "You address me without being recognized, Cadet?" Kvortak's voice was dangerously soft. Ilera stood her ground. "The protocols for joint exercises clearly state that operational assignments should be based on demonstrated capability, not species designation." A Xylosian officer nearby hissed a warning, but it was too late. Kvortak strode toward her, towering nearly 2 meters above the human. His presence was suffocating, a deliberate intimidation tactic that had cowed countless opponents in the past. "You cite protocols to me?" The general's voice dripped with venom. "I have commanded fleets while your ancestors were still crawling out of their primitive dwellings." Ilera maintained her composure, though her heart pounded against her ribs. "The Alliance was founded on principles of equal contribution and mutual respect, General. I believe those principles extend to military operations as well." It happened in an instant. Kvortak's massive hand lashed out, the sound of the slap echoing like a gunshot through the chamber. The force should have sent the small human flying, but somehow Ilera remained standing. The next 3 seconds stretched into eternity. Instead of crumpling or retreating, Ilera's body shifted almost imperceptibly. Her right hand darted upward with surgical precision, finding a specific point at the junction of Kvortak's upper arm and shoulder plate. Her fingers pressed deeply, applying pressure to what appeared to be an innocuous spot on the Xylosian's anatomy. The general's expression transformed from rage to shock, then to agony. His knees buckled as if someone had cut the strings holding him upright. A strangled sound escaped his throat, something between a gasp and a whimper. "Please, stop," he whispered, his proud voice reduced to a plea. The assembled officers watched in stunned disbelief as the mighty General Kvortak, conqueror of the Vega uprising and hero of the Proxima Centauri defensive, knelt before a human cadet 1/3 his size, begging for mercy. The silence that followed was deafening. "I apologize for the disruption, General," Ilera said softly, removing her hand. "I was merely defending myself against an unprovoked assault." The moment her pressure point hold released, Kvortak stumbled backward, clutching his arm. Rage, humiliation, and confusion warred on his face as he struggled to comprehend what had just occurred. His officers rushed forward, but he waved them away, his pride still intact enough to reject assistance. "This meeting is dismissed," he growled, eyes never leaving Ilera. Exercises will proceed as scheduled. As the room cleared, whispers already spreading like wildfire through the station. Ambassador Talon, the human diplomatic representative to Harmonia Terminus, approached Alara with a carefully neutral expression. Cadet Vance, my office. Now, the ambassador's office was a stark contrast to the military austerity of the briefing room. Comfortable furnishings, artwork from various worlds, and large viewports offering a spectacular vista of the nearby nebula. But the atmosphere inside was anything but relaxing. Do you have any idea what you've done? Ambassador Talon paced behind his desk. He was an experienced diplomat in his 60s, with silver hair and the weathered face of someone who had navigated interstellar politics for decades. Defended myself, sir, Alara replied, standing at attention. You've created a diplomatic incident of potentially catastrophic proportions. Talon's voice rose slightly before he controlled it. The Xylosians are founding members of the Alliance. They command 30% of our combined military forces. He struck me first, Ambassador. Unprovoked. Yes, and that was inexcusable, Talon conceded. But your response? He shook his head. Where did you learn that technique? Xenophysiology and adaptive combat, sir. 4th-year curriculum. Talon's eyebrows rose. They're teaching cadets Xylosian pressure points now. We study the physiological vulnerabilities of all major Alliance species, sir. It's part of the comprehensive interspecies combat program. The ambassador sat heavily in his chair. The Xylosian delegation is demanding your immediate removal from the station. They're calling it espionage, claiming humans have been secretly studying their weaknesses. With all due respect, sir, we haven't been secretly doing anything. The Academy's curriculum is available for review by all Alliance members. Then perhaps they should have reviewed it, a new voice interjected. Both turned to see Captain Reyes, the commanding officer of the human military contingent, entering the office. The dark-skinned woman carried herself with quiet authority, her uniform impeccable. Ambassador, I've submitted a formal request for an Alliance Security Council investigation, Reyes announced. General Kvortak violated at least 3 Alliance protocols by striking a cadet. The fact that he specifically targeted a human suggests this may qualify as a bias incident. Talon sighed. Captain, we need to handle this delicately. With respect, sir, delicacy is what has allowed certain attitudes to persist within the Alliance ranks. Humans have been treated as junior partners for too long. She turned to Alara. Cadet Vance's record is exemplary. She responded with appropriate restraint to an assault from a superior officer. Restraint. Talon's laugh was without humor. She brought a Xylosian general to his knees, and then immediately released him, causing no lasting physical damage. Reyes's eyes hardened. If she had wanted to, she could have severed the neural bundle at that junction, potentially paralyzing his dominant arm. Alara remained silent, though the captain's assessment was accurate. The Academy's training emphasized control and minimizing permanent damage, even in combat situations. The Security Council has assigned Arbiter XIN to investigate, Reyes continued. They'll arrive tomorrow. Until then, General Kvortak has been temporarily suspended from command, and Cadet Vance is to continue her duties as scheduled. Talon rubbed his temples. This could not have come at a worse time. The Nebula Unity exercises are critical for our standing in the Alliance. Perhaps, Reyes countered, this incident will make it clear that humans are not to be underestimated or mistreated. After being dismissed, Alara walked through the curved corridors of Harmonia Terminus, acutely aware of the stares and whispers that followed her. News traveled at superluminal speeds aboard a space station, especially news this explosive. Her fellow human cadets greeted her with a mixture of awe and concern in their shared quarters. Is it true? Asked Jensen, a lanky navigation specialist. You took down General Kvortak? Alara set her datapad on her bunk. I defended myself. That's all. They're saying he begged for mercy, Cadet Rodriguez whispered, eyes wide. That he actually pleaded with you to stop. The Xylosian peripheral nervous system is structured differently from ours, Ilara explained, uncomfortable with their admiration. The cluster nerve center at the shoulder junction controls both motor function and pain response. It's not about strength, it's applied knowledge. It's still incredible, Jensen insisted. No one stands up to the Xylosians like that. Maybe it's time someone did, Rodriguez added. They've been looking down on humans since we joined the Alliance. Ilara frowned. This isn't about species pride or one-upmanship. The Alliance only works if there's mutual respect. Her communicator chimed, a summons from the station commander. It seemed her day of confrontations was far from over. In his temporary quarters, General Kvortak paced like a caged beast. The pain had subsided, but the humiliation burned like acid in his veins. He had activated privacy shields to conceal his disgrace from the crew, though he knew it was already too late. His second-in-command, Commander Soth, watched him warily. The Council has appointed an arbiter, General. They arrive tomorrow. A formal investigation? Kvortak snarled. For disciplining an insubordinate cadet? For assaulting an allied officer in training, Soth corrected carefully. The human ambassador has filed a grievance. Of course they have, Kvortak spat. These humans are soft, unable to accept proper military discipline. Soth hesitated before speaking. There is another matter, General. The High Command has expressed concern about the incident. They've requested a full report on the human cadet's technique. Kvortak froze. What? They wish to understand how a being of such limited physical capability managed to incapacitate a Xylosian warrior. Soth's expression remained carefully neutral. They find it concerning. The general's scales darkened with anger and shame. Among Xylosians, martial prowess was everything. To be defeated by a physically inferior species was beyond humiliating. It was potentially career-ending. Show me the human cadet's file, he ordered abruptly. Soth brought up Ilara Vance's service record on the room's holographic display. Kvortak studied it with narrowed eyes. Top of her class in tactical assessment, xenobiology, and adaptive combat, he read aloud. Specialized training in interspecies negotiation and conflict resolution. Multiple commendations for innovative problem-solving. The humans have developed an unusual approach to space fleet operations, Soth observed. They emphasize knowledge acquisition and adaptation over raw strength or technological superiority. Kvortak replayed the incident in his mind, analyzing the human's movements with professional detachment. Her technique had been flawless. No wasted motion, no hesitation, precise application of force exactly where he was most vulnerable. How did she know? He murmured, more to himself than to his subordinate. That nerve cluster isn't visible externally. Perhaps we should review the Human Academy's curriculum, Soth suggested. As the cadet mentioned, their protocols are publicly available. Kvortak nodded slowly, his tactical mind already shifting from personal affront to strategic assessment. If humans were systematically studying the physiological vulnerabilities of all Alliance species, what else might they know? For the first time, he felt something beyond contempt when thinking about humans. It might have been respect, or perhaps the first stirrings of fear. Arbiter XIN arrived the following day aboard a sleek diplomatic vessel. A member of the Allori species, tall, slender beings renowned for their impartiality and analytical abilities. XIN moved with deliberate grace as they were escorted to the station's conference facility, which had been converted into an impromptu hearing chamber. The investigation proceeded methodically. Security recordings of the incident were reviewed. Witnesses were called to testify. Medical scans of both Kvortak and Ilara were examined to document any injuries. On the second day, Ilara was called to demonstrate the technique she had used. Please understand, Cadet Vance, this is not to sensationalize the incident, Arbiter XAN explained, their melodious voice carrying easily through the chamber. But the Council needs to understand the nature of your response to assess its proportionality. A Xylosian medical officer had volunteered to serve as the demonstration subject. With careful precision, Ilara showed how she had targeted the nerve cluster, explaining the physiological principles involved. And this technique is taught to all fourth-year cadets? XIN inquired. Yes, Arbiter. It's part of our xenophysiological self-defense curriculum. We study defensive techniques applicable to all major alliance species, including vulnerabilities of humans. Kvortak asked suddenly from his position at the side of the chamber. All eyes turned to him in surprise. Alara nodded without hesitation. Especially humans. We begin with thorough study of our own vulnerabilities before learning about others. Kvortak frowned, clearly not expecting this answer. You teach potential enemies how to defeat you. We teach allies how our bodies work, Alara corrected. The Academy believes transparency builds trust. The Arbiter made a notation in their datapad. Captain Reyes, could you elaborate on the philosophy behind this curriculum? Captain Reyes stepped forward. Humans are relatively new to interstellar travel. We recognized early that we couldn't compete with more established species in terms of technological development or physical capabilities. Our strategy has been to focus on understanding both ourselves and others. A curious approach, Xian observed. Knowledge is a force multiplier, Reyes continued. We've developed comprehensive databases on cultural practices, physiological characteristics, and communication patterns for every species we encounter. Not to exploit weaknesses, but to facilitate cooperation and, when necessary, resolve conflicts with minimal force. The hearing continued for several more hours, with various officers and officials presenting testimony. Throughout, Kvortak remained uncharacteristically quiet, observing Alara with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. As the proceedings adjourned for the day, station alarms suddenly blared to life. Attention all personnel, the automated system announced. Multiple unidentified vessels approaching. Defensive posture Alpha. This is not a drill. The chamber erupted into organized chaos as military personnel rushed to their stations. Arbiter Xian was quickly escorted to secure quarters, while Kvortak, despite his suspended status, moved instinctively toward the command center. General, you are not authorized, a security officer began. We are under attack, Kvortak growled. My tactical expertise may be required. Captain Reyes intercepted them in the corridor. Let him through. If this is serious, we need every experienced officer. In the command center, screens displayed a formation of sleek, predatory vessels approaching Harmonia Terminus. Their design was unfamiliar, but their weapons' signatures were unmistakable. Corsairs, the station commander identified grimly. Heavily armed, at least 12 ships. Space pirates were a persistent threat in the outer territories, but rarely attacked facilities as well defended as Harmonia Terminus. Something was different about this group. They're targeting our communication array, a tactical officer reported. Precision strikes. They're trying to isolate us. Kvortak studied the attack pattern. This is not random opportunism. They've studied our defenses. He turned to Captain Reyes. Request permission to coordinate counteroffensive. The station commander hesitated, glancing at Reyes, who nodded. Granted, but Captain Reyes will oversee. Kvortak accepted this constraint without argument, focusing entirely on the tactical situation. Deploy interceptors in formation Delta. Target their lead vessel's propulsion systems. As the defensive operation mobilized, Alara and her fellow cadets reported to their emergency stations. The human cadets were assigned to the Auxiliary Tactical Center, monitoring sensor data and communication channels. Something's wrong with their attack pattern, Alara murmured, studying the Corsair's movements. It's too clean. Jensen looked up from his console. What do you mean? Pirates are usually disorganized, opportunistic, she explained, highlighting sensor readings. These ships are maintaining perfect formation. And look at their approach vector. They're deliberately presenting minimal target profiles to our defense grid. Her eyes narrowed as she cross-referenced the data. This isn't a pirate raid. It's a military strike disguised as one. In the main command center, the station's defenses were proving inadequate against the precision of the attack. The Corsairs had already disabled the primary communication array and were systematically targeting defense emplacements. They know exactly where to hit us, the station commander said grimly. It's as if they have our security protocols. Kvortak's scaled face was grim. This is a premeditated strike. Someone has studied this station's weaknesses extensively. Captain Reyes received an urgent communication from the Auxiliary Tactical Center. Sir, came Alera's voice. We believe these aren't actual Corsairs. The attack pattern suggests military training, possibly Centauri separatist tactics. Kvortak frowned. The separatists were defeated 3 cycles ago. Yes, sir, Alera continued. But their tactical officers could have been recruited by actual Corsair groups. We're detecting an unusual signal pattern consistent with Centauri military encoding. Transfer that data to the main tactical display, Reyes ordered. When the information appeared, Kvortak studied it intently before looking up in surprise. The cadet is correct. This is a variant of the Centauri battle language. His eyes narrowed. How did she recognize it? Historical conflict analysis, Reyes replied with a hint of pride. Standard curriculum. Before Kvortak could respond, the station shuddered under a direct hit. Hull breach on level 4, an officer reported. They're deploying boarding craft. The situation deteriorated rapidly. Despite the defenders' efforts, multiple boarding parties breached the station's perimeter. Security teams engaged in fierce firefights throughout the lower levels, while the command center struggled to coordinate a response with compromised communications. They're systematically targeting our central power distribution nodes, Kvortak observed. If they succeed, life support systems will fail. We need to neutralize their command ship, Reyes concluded. Cut off the head, and the body will flounder. Agreed, but our fighters can't penetrate their defensive screen, the station. Commander replied. And they've disabled our heavy weapons platforms. Kvortak's expression darkened. There may be another option. A small strike team could potentially board their command vessel using one of our maintenance shuttles. The Corsairs might mistake it for debris. A suicide mission, the commander objected. Not necessarily, Kvortak countered. I've studied Corsair vessel designs. They prioritize offensive capabilities over internal security. A small, well-trained team could potentially reach their command center. Reyes considered this. I'll lead the strike team. No, Kvortak said firmly. I will. This is a high-risk operation requiring intimate knowledge of assault tactics. You're under suspension, General, the commander reminded him. Then reinstate me temporarily, Kvortak demanded. This station, and everyone aboard it, is at risk. After a brief consultation with Arbiter Exine, who had authority to modify the suspension order in emergency situations, Kvortak received conditional reinstatement. He quickly assembled a strike team of 6 Silosian commandos, ready to depart within minutes. As they prepared to board the shuttle, Alera Vance appeared in the docking bay, accompanied by 2 other human cadets. General, she addressed Kvortak, request permission to join the strike team. Kvortak's first instinct was refusal. This is a combat operation, Cadet, not a training exercise. Sir, we've identified a potential vulnerability in the Corsair command ship's security systems, Alera explained. It uses a variant of the Arcturus protocol for internal communications. Human cadets are trained in subverting these systems. How could you possibly know their internal systems? Kvortak demanded. We don't precisely, Alera admitted. But their external transmission patterns suggest Arcturus architecture. If I'm right, we can disable their internal security remotely once aboard. Kvortak stared at her, weighing the risk against potential advantage. Finally, he nodded. Very well. You and 1 other cadet may join us. But you will follow orders explicitly. Is that clear? Perfectly, sir. The maintenance shuttle departed under radio silence. Its systems powered down to minimal levels to avoid detection. As predicted, the Corsairs ignored it, focusing instead on their systematic dismantling of the station's defenses. Aboard the shuttle, tension ran high. The Silosian commandos checked their weapons repeatedly, while Alera and Cadet Rodriguez prepared their specialized electronic equipment. Why did you volunteer for this, Cadet? Kvortak asked suddenly, his voice low enough that only Alera could hear. She looked up, surprised by the question. Same reason you did, sir. To protect the station. After our previous interaction, I would have expected you to avoid my command. Alara met his gaze steadily. This isn't about you or me, General. It's about the mission. Kvortak studied her for a moment longer before nodding slightly, as if confirming something to himself. The boarding operation proceeded with greater ease than anticipated, perhaps too easily. They attached to the Corsair vessel's maintenance hatch, bypassed the external locks using Alara's decryption algorithms, and entered the ship without raising alarms. Suspicious, Kvortak murmured as they moved through darkened corridors. Their internal security is minimal. They may have committed most of their forces to the boarding parties, a commando suggested. Or they're leading us into a trap, Kvortak countered. Stay alert. They encountered only token resistance as they approached the ship's command center. Alara worked quickly at each security junction, bypassing systems with surprising efficiency. The Xylosians neutralized the few guards they encountered with silent precision. Command center ahead, the point commando reported, detecting multiple life signs inside. Kvortak positioned his team for the assault. Standard breach protocol. Cadets will remain in the rear until the room is secured. Alara frowned, studying her scanner. Sir, I'm detecting unusual energy signatures inside. Possible. Her warning came too late. As the commandos breached the door, they were met not with the expected resistance, but with a blinding flash and an electromagnetic pulse that instantly disabled their weapons. Ambush! Kvortak roared, falling back as armored figures emerged from concealed positions throughout the chamber. The strike team found themselves surrounded, outnumbered, and outgunned. The Corsair commander, a tall, cybernetically enhanced humanoid, stepped forward with obvious satisfaction. General Kvortak, he acknowledged, your reputation for predictability serves us well. You knew we were coming, Kvortak realized. We counted on it, the commander confirmed. Luring key officers away from Harmonia Terminus was part of our plan. The station will fall within the hour, and you won't be there to prevent it. As the Corsair guards moved to secure the prisoners, Alara caught Kvortak's eye and made a subtle gesture toward an overhead conduit. The general gave an almost imperceptible nod, understanding her intent. You underestimate the Alliance, Kvortak told the Corsair commander, deliberately drawing attention to himself. Even now, reinforcements are being summoned. Impossible, the commander scoffed. We've disabled all communication systems. While attention focused on Kvortak, Alara slowly positioned herself beneath the marked conduit, Rodriguez covering her movements. When she was in position, she gave the signal. Kvortak suddenly lunged forward, creating a distraction as Alara produced a small device from her boot, overlooked in the Corsair's hasty security scan, and fired it upward. The device attached to the conduit and immediately released a focused electromagnetic pulse, different from the one that had disabled their weapons. The Corsair ship's lights flickered, then died completely. Emergency systems failed to activate. Now, Kvortak commanded in the darkness. The Xylosian commandos, whose species had evolved excellent night vision, moved swiftly to neutralize the confused Corsair guards. Alara and Rodriguez activated personal illumination devices, providing just enough light to navigate by. What did you do? Kvortak demanded as he rejoined Alara, retrieving a weapon from a fallen guard. Targeted EMP, she explained quickly, designed specifically for Arcturus-based systems. It creates a cascading failure that's nearly impossible to recover from without a complete restart, which would take hours, Kvortak realized. Impressive, Cadet. They fought their way to the ship's auxiliary bridge, encountering disorganized resistance from crews unable to coordinate in the darkness. Once there, Alara and Rodriguez worked rapidly to access the command systems. We can use their own communication array to contact the station, Rodriguez reported, and potentially interfere with their attack coordination. Do it, Kvortak ordered. Can you disable their weapons remotely? Alara shook her head. Not completely, but we can introduce targeting errors that would make them less effective. That will have to suffice. Commander Vex, he addressed one of his officers, secure this position. The rest of us will proceed to their main engineering section to ensure they can't restore power prematurely. As they moved through the disabled vessel, Kvortak found himself reassessing the human cadets. Their performance under pressure was exemplary, their specialized knowledge proving decisive. Most surprisingly, they worked seamlessly with his Xylosian commandos, adapting to the team dynamic without hesitation. They reached engineering with minimal resistance, securing it quickly. Kvortak established defensive positions while Alara worked to lock out the Corsairs from their own systems. "General," she said suddenly, looking up from a terminal, "I've accessed their tactical database. This isn't just a raid. It's the first strike in a planned offensive against multiple Alliance outposts. There are at least 3 other Corsair fleets positioned near key installations." Kvortak moved to examine her findings. "This is a coordinated campaign," he agreed grimly. "If Harmonia Terminus falls, it would create a strategic gap in our defensive perimeter. I can transmit this intelligence to Alliance Command using the Corsairs' own encrypted channels," Alara suggested. "They won't be monitoring their own frequencies for outgoing transmissions." "Do it," Kvortak ordered. "Then prepare to return to the station. We need to coordinate a counteroffensive." Using the captured command ship systems, they managed to disrupt the Corsair attack on Harmonia Terminus long enough for the station's defenders to regain the initiative. The battle lasted several more hours, but the tide had turned. With their command structure compromised and their coordinated attack dissolving into isolated skirmishes, the Corsairs were ultimately defeated. The strike team returned to a damaged but defiant Harmonia Terminus. Emergency crews worked to repair critical systems, while security teams processed captured Corsairs. In the station commander's office, Kvortak and Alara delivered their report to a stunned audience of senior officers. If not for Cadet Vance's identification of the Corsair command systems, the mission would have failed, Kvortak concluded, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Her knowledge and quick thinking were instrumental to our success." Captain Reyes nodded with undisguised pride. "The cadet's performance exemplifies the standard we strive for at the Academy." Arbiter Exine, who had remained on station throughout the crisis, studied both Kvortak and Alara thoughtfully. "It seems this emergency has provided unexpected context for our investigation. General, has this experience altered your assessment of human capabilities?" Kvortak straightened, his expression solemn. "Arbiter, I must acknowledge that my previous judgments were flawed. I allowed prejudice to cloud my tactical assessment." He turned slightly toward Alara. "The human cadets demonstrated exceptional ability, adaptability, and courage under extreme conditions. And regarding the original incident," Exine pressed. Kvortak's scales darkened slightly, the Xylosian equivalent of a blush. "My actions were unbecoming of an officer and in violation of Alliance protocols." Cadet Vance responded appropriately to an unprovoked assault. "I withdraw any objections to her conduct and accept full responsibility for the incident." The formal investigation concluded the following day. Kvortak was issued an official reprimand, but reinstated to his command in recognition of his actions during the Corsair attack. Alara received a commendation for her performance, both in the original incident and the subsequent mission. But perhaps more significant was the informal meeting that took place afterward in one of the station's observation lounges. Kvortak found Alara there, watching the ongoing repairs to the station's exterior. "Cadet Vance," he acknowledged, joining her at the viewport. "General," she replied with a respectful nod. They stood in silence for a moment, the vast nebula beyond the station casting colored light across their features. "I wish to understand something," Kvortak finally said. "During our first encounter, you could have caused permanent damage with that technique. Why didn't you?" Alara considered the question carefully. "Causing unnecessary harm contradicts everything the Academy teaches us. The goal is always to resolve conflict with minimal force, even when faced with an aggressive opponent twice your size. Especially then," she replied. "Escalation rarely serves anyone's interests." Kvortak nodded slowly. "A principle I should perhaps have considered more carefully." He turned to face her directly. I have submitted a formal proposal to the Alliance High Command for an exchange program between Xylosian military academies and your Earth Alliance Base Academy. Alera's eyes widened in surprise. Sir, your approach to training has demonstrated clear advantages, he explained. The comprehensive study of other species, emphasis on adaptive tactics, focus on resolution over dominance. These are principles that could benefit our own officer development. I'm honored by your assessment, General. It is merely a tactical evaluation, Kvortak stated, though his tone lacked its former coldness. The Alliance must continually evolve to meet new challenges. Cognitive rigidity is as dangerous as technological stagnation. As they continued their conversation, discussing potential areas of collaboration and exchange, neither explicitly mentioned the incident that had brought them to this point. Yet it hung between them, not as a source of lingering resentment, but as the catalyst for a profound reassessment on both sides. 3 weeks later, as the Nebula Unity exercises finally commenced, delayed but not canceled by the Corsair attack, a remarkable sight greeted observers on Harmonia Terminus. General Kvortak and Cadet Alera Vance stood side by side in the command simulation chamber, jointly leading a mixed team of Xylosian officers and human cadets through a complex tactical scenario. Remember, Kvortak instructed the assembled trainees, strength alone does not ensure victory. Knowledge, adaptation, and cooperation multiply our effectiveness. Beside him, Alera added, and understanding your allies, their capabilities and perspectives, is as important as understanding your opponents. The general nodded in agreement, then turned to the tactical display. Now, let us proceed with the exercise. Together, throughout Harmonia, Terminus, and beyond, word spread of the unlikely partnership that had formed between the once arrogant Xylosian general and the human cadet who had brought him to his knees. Some saw it as a compelling symbol of the Alliance's evolving culture. Others remained skeptical that long-held prejudices could truly be overcome. But for those directly involved in the joint training sessions, the evidence was clear. Something fundamental had changed, not through grand political declarations or formal treaties, but through the simple, powerful act of confronting bias, acknowledging error, and choosing to learn from one another. In her personal log that evening, Alera reflected on the journey from that momentous slap to the present day. Perhaps, she wrote, the most valuable lessons arise not from easy agreements, but from difficult confrontations, honestly addressed. It took 3 seconds to demonstrate that physical strength isn't everything, but it's taken weeks of working together to show that moral strength might be. Across the station in his quarters, Kvortak was making a similar entry in his official report to High Command. The humans possess a resource more valuable than advanced weaponry or overwhelming force, he concluded. They have cultivated an institutional commitment to understanding others. In my assessment, this represents not a tactical advantage, but a strategic one, and it is an advantage we would be wise to adopt. The nebula beyond the station continued its slow, cosmic dance, gases and energies intermingling to create something greater than the sum of their parts. Within Harmonia Terminus, a similar process had begun, sparked by a moment of conflict but sustained by a shared commitment to growth and mutual respect. It would not always be an easy path. Centuries of cultural differences and ingrained assumptions would not disappear overnight. But with each joint training session, each shared meal in the station's dining hall, each informal exchange of ideas and experiences, the foundation grew stronger. And it had all begun with a slap, and 3 seconds that changed everything.